This is a brief resource designed to quickly catch employers up with what's been going on in the apprenticeship world. We're about 7 years into a reform now of apprenticeships in England, and hopefully this resource will help you get you up to speed with what's changed and where you can find out further information and understand a little bit about how this project can help you as you build your business and potentially utilise what apprenticeships have to offer in Medway. The first area of real importance and difference about the new apprenticeships is that they're based on standards, apprenticeship standards, and these standards are written by employers themselves. The standards are focused on specific occupational roles. So slightly bigger than the more narrowly defined job roles, they're looking at occupations, and those occupations are captured in the standards. And like before, apprenticeships are in the main largely funded by government support when it comes to their training. The employer is still responsible for the apprentice wage, but the government is making major contributions to the training of that apprenticeship. So there's been a bit of a changing emphasis in terms of the apprenticeships as we used to know them, the framework-based apprenticeships, and the apprenticeships as they now are, the standards-based apprenticeships. And the shift is really to put the demand side more in control around the design and quality of the apprenticeships. By demand side, employers, small, medium and large employers, getting them more involved in the design, the creation and the implementation of the apprenticeship reforms. So previously, apprenticeships were based on frameworks, and frameworks were really a basket of things put together to create a coherent journey, and that basket might include mandatory qualifications, an NVQ or another competence-based qualification, and a technical certification or a technical certificate, an RVQ, a knowledge-based component sit alongside that competence-based component. There would also be a maths and English requirement, either through GCSE or functional skills. There'd be personal learning and thinking skills and employer rights and responsibilities, making up that basket or package of things that came together to create the apprenticeship framework. Now, there's a much more simplified process in place where apprenticeships are rooted in a short, succinct statement of occupational competence captured in a standard that sets out the knowledge, skills and behaviours associated with that job role. So the journey starts in two different places, no longer the collection of the basket of things drawn together to create a framework apprenticeship. A single standard starts the journey on the standards route for the apprenticeship. There's still initial assessment, and there is still on and off the job training, much as there was before under the framework scheme. But the employer now is more in the driving seat. Where we see real change in the transition from frameworks to standards is around the assessment and how apprenticeships are now assessed. Whereas before, you remember I talked about frameworks being based on a package of other qualifications pulled together into a framework to create an apprenticeship. Each one of those qualifications, whether it be the knowledge-based component or the competence-based component, would be qualifications in their own right, and as such have their own rules around assessment for those qualifications. Now, under the standards-based approach, there's a much more simplified journey. There is the standard, and then there's the on-program phase where the skills and learning and development progress through as the skills training takes place. Then there is a gateway, and at that gateway point, it's an assessment or a determination of whether the apprentice is ready for endpoint assessment. Are they ready to be assessed? And unlike the previous framework way of assessing using qualifications, this is where a third-party independent endpoint assessment organisation comes in to work with the apprentice coming from the training provider to give an independent view of whether they're competent or not, using the assessment instruments that are set out by employers as they relate to that specific standard. Now we'll look at assessment plans in a little bit more detail just a little later, But what we have is a single learning journey for the apprentice, a gateway to determine whether they're ready to enter the closing phase of their apprenticeship, to have that independent endpoint assessment, and if they are, they progress through to endpoint assessment, where the assessment plan associated with the apprenticeship standard determines how and when and in what order they'll be assessed. The endpoint assessment organisations capable of administering that assessment have already gone through a quality filter on the government register of endpoint assessment organisations to show that they are both capable and worthy of assessing the apprentices in these particular standards. On successful completion of endpoint assessment, then there'll be certification of the apprenticeship in much the same way that had all the different components in the framework been assessed correctly and everything passed, there would have been eventual certification of the apprenticeship. Here it's successful completion of endpoint assessment, that bit within the red window on the slide that you're seeing. Successful completion of those requirements would lead to certification, and much as before, the inference about, or the claim made for successful apprenticeships coming through assessment would be that they were occupationally competent. Let's just go a little bit deeper now into the apprenticeship standards that I've been talking so much about in the earlier slides. What are apprenticeship standards? Remember, these are standards that have been written by a group of like-minded employers coming together, representing all aspects of the employer marketplace that could be using these standards. It could be a mix of different sectors, from different industries, from different points within the supply chain, but they have the same common interest in developing an apprenticeship in this particular occupational role, and they've got together to collaborate and work in partnership to create an apprenticeship standard and then its associated assessment plan. Perhaps the easiest way to familiarise yourself with apprenticeship standards and what's involved is actually to go and have a look at the Institute for Apprenticeships Technical Education's website. You'll find it on the web address given on the slide, which is www.instituteforapprenticeships.org, www.instituteforapprenticeships, all one word, The home page looks like the picture on the slide, the top graphic on the slide, and you'll see off to the right hand side there an option for apprenticeship standards. If you click on that option for apprenticeship standards, what you will get is the landing page for all of the apprenticeship standards, and there's about 700 plus apprenticeship standards now, covering all occupational roles from level 2, which is like a GCSE type equivalent, all the way up to level 7, which is like a master's degree type equivalent. And you'll see that on that standards page there's some tools to help you search for what you might be looking for, and you can search by route or sector, for example digital or care services or construction, or you can search by level. And it's worthwhile having a look through just to see the extent to which apprenticeships have now grown to fill out and cover most areas of our working lives and most sectors within the economy. From that standards landing page where I can access all 700 plus standards, I've gone in and filtered for digital standards because I'm particularly interested in digital apprenticeships, and having been given a list of digital apprenticeships, I've clicked on the IT Solutions Technician standard. So here's an occupational standard, an apprenticeship standard written by employers covering the occupational role of IT Solutions Technician. And if I look across to the right hand side, to that shaded bar that's running vertically down the side, I can see that it's at level 3, which is an A-level or BTEC national equivalent. I have the reference number for the standard, which is STO 505. I can see that it's been available for delivery now for a little while, first coming on for delivery on the 18th of February 2019. If I were to scroll down the left-hand side, I would see all the knowledge, skills and behaviours associated with that standard, as well as the role profile. But interestingly, if we go back across to the right-hand side, you can just see clipped at the bottom of the screen on that bottom right part of the graphic, I'm getting a sense now, or a flavour, for those employers that were actually involved in writing and putting the standard together. So I can see IBM, I can see Cisco, I can see Fujitsu, I can see Accenture, I can see Brighton and Hove City Council were on that board writing the standard, and there'll be others. Now, if I was to carry on down that shaded bar on the right hand side, I would also be able to access the assessment plan. And if I opened up that as a PDF, it would show me how those knowledge, skills and behaviours within this standard that are listed on the left hand side would all be pulled together in that endpoint assessment that I talked about earlier. Do you know that area that was in the red box the other side of Gateway? That area of assessment where an independent assessment organisation would come in and assess the apprentice, directed by the assessment tools that were specified within the assessment plan. That assessment plan too has been written by employers. Well, I would find details of that assessment plan there as well. And obviously, more importantly, from a kind of support perspective, this area on the right hand side also shows me the funding that's available for this particular standard. And this standard is available with £13,000 worth of support for the training of apprentices and IT solutions technician. So there's about 80% of that funding amount available to training providers to actually train the apprentice and IT solutions technician, and then there's about 20% of that amount available to the endpoint assessment organisations for assessing the competence of the IT solutions technician in line with the assessment plan requirements. If I also continue to scroll down that right hand side as well, I see a little bit of functionality that would help me find some training providers for this standard if I was looking for it. And there's some more detail there as well about the operational requirements of the standard. So really there's quite a lot going on in the standards page, and that level of detail for the active standards exists for all those 700 plus standards that are on this Institute for Apprenticeships website in their standards directory. So there's quite a lot of a resource there to look through to see exactly what each individual standard is about. And it doesn't have to be IT solutions technician in the digital front. It's also there for infrastructure technician or digital marketing, or we can come out of there and go into adult care, and I can look at the apprenticeship standards for adult care and see the employers that were involved in writing those standards and the funding bands that are available. Or I can come out of adult care and move into engineering and manufacturing or construction, or any one of those sectors listed across the economy that you saw down the left hand side of that standards landing page. So it really is a real resource to look under the bonnet of exactly what's involved in apprenticeship standards, because those knowledge, skills and requirements will be what your apprentice will be being trained in and then assessed in were they to take this apprenticeship. This has been a little bit of a whistle-stop tour around what's changed about apprenticeships, just to get you started and thinking about apprenticeships for your midway business. If you want to know more in depth, or you have some particular standards in mind, or you want to learn a little bit more about how apprenticeships might fit in your business and what standards you might need, then get in touch with NSAR. You'll get the details of who to contact and how to talk to us in the project from the page that you'll be able to access this PowerPoint resource. So speak to us, and we're here to help you understand apprenticeships and work out how they can work for your business. So please do get in touch, and I look forward to seeing you at some point very soon.